If you buy a property 500,000 euros today, and you sell it for 500,000 euros tomorrow, congratulations, you've just lost 100,000 euros. Yeah. And that's a harsh reality. The harsh truths about buying property in Spain, the things people don't talk about and that you as buyers need to understand is what we're going to be talking about in this video. Are you guys ready? Let's go.
Welcome back, guys. All right, so today we are going to be covering the harsh realities of buying property in Spain. And Kian, some of the topics that I'd like to cover with you today are pricing and market realities.
Yeah.
I'd like to go through the costs of buying and selling properties here in Spain, expectations versus reality, and then
that's a very big one.
Yeah, that's a big topic. And then navigating the market, and then the different players that are involved.
All right, let's go. Let's do this.
Okay. So first and foremost, you've been on the market for quite a long time. You've been in the real estate business for a very long time. How have property prices in Spain changed over the last few years, especially compared to, let's say, other or European countries, first of all?
So we recently did a video with one of our expert talks. We invited Raimundo Larraín Nesbitt onto the channel. It's a really, really, really interesting video, which we'll link up here. And we talked about, where the property market's heading in Spain, right? And we basically talked about how it's a perfect storm, right? Property prices have just sort of increased steadily over the last few years, especially after COVID, and have been quite, sharp increases over the last few years. And we're now entering a period of sort of, normalization. We're going to see constant growth, but at, let's say, not as sharp as we've seen.
Yeah, slightly slower rate, perhaps.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's sort of a perfect storm in a way, because we have two scenarios economically, right? We have, first of all, Spain that's now where we are, certain areas of Spain, but where we are in Costa del Sol is becoming a real European prime hotspot. And you have property prices going up, and then you have an economy where inflation is rampaging, right? So you have like two opposite forces where you have, market sort of demand growing, a shortage of property stock.
I was just going to ask about supply.
Supply is like at all-time lows, which is something we discuss in this video. It's super interesting if you guys want to check it out. And then we have sort of the opposite effect, which is, inflation, right? And people's savings losing value and purchase power by the day. Like in Europe, all around Europe, we've seen inflations of 3-4%, and at the end of the day, the cumulative effect of that over 4 or 5 years is really strong, right? Yeah. That's one of the main things. So, it's two forces in opposite direction. And, what's very clear for us is that the property market in Spain, and again, like I'll just cautionally say, I'm talking about Spain generally, but Spain is massive, right? Some areas are going to keep on appreciating. Areas are going to keep on, sort of prices are going to increase. But the general view is that next few years, property prices are going to continue to rise, undoubtedly, but at different rates.
Why do you think the Costa del Sol has become such a hotspot for foreign investment?
So that's like the number one. One of the reasons is it's a European prime hotspot, because I think that for many years it hasn't really had the spotlight on it, and it's never had the spotlight on it like it has today, right? With incredible infrastructure, the Malaga airport connected as a connection hub to any European capital within 2.5 hours. Our Spanish infrastructure, generally roads and so on, which of course they can be improved, but it's a very well connected location. Great weather all year round.
Yeah,
all these things,
climate,
which we always talk about, just make Spain amazing, right? So people are choosing to relocate here, and we've talked about it on the channel for so many years now that people choose Costa del Sol as a relocation place, right? People come and live in Spain with their families, leave everything behind and come and live in Spain. So like these are just driving forces, and that's not going to stop, right? So the reason we wanted to put this topic into this video, the harsh realities, is that prices are going to continue to rise. Right, and that's harsh, but it is the way it is. All indicators show us that property prices are going to increase, not as sharply as it has in the previous years, but they're going to continue to increase. Yeah. And that's something which we tell our buyers all the time, and our team for that fact. If you're going to be entering market to buy a property, your relocation home in 2028, well, expect that the market to be at least 10%, sort of more higher than what it is right now, for example. Yeah. And at least with that information in hand, it's fine, but that's not a problem. But make sure that you know that, and you budget, you sort of plan that into your budgeting. It might be that you have your money parked in an investment, and you want to take less risks or more risks up until 2028, and you can sort of forecast what sort of budget you'll have by 2028. But don't bank on these prices for your eventual move in 2028.
Yeah.
That's what the sort of harsh reality which we're trying to allude to.
I think that more or less answers what my next question was going to be, which is, what would you tell those people that are waiting on the sidelines for prices to decrease eventually?
I don't think that's going to happen. Like, I really that is not going to happen, because we would need to see monetary value going up. The opposite of we would need to see the opposite of what's happening with inflation. Value of our monetary sort of value stabilizing or going up, which is not going to happen. I don't see supply increasing in Spain.
I was just going to say, or sort of freeing up of land and a huge sort of development effort happening.
I really recommend anyone that hasn't watched this video, that's it's actually performed really well on YouTube, to have a look at that conversation we have with Lorraine Nesbitt, Mr. Lorraine Nesbitt. That's not going to happen. So people are waiting on the sidelines. Like, fine, wait on the sidelines. Depending on why you're waiting on the sidelines, understand that it's not going to happen. Like, absolutely, eliminate that from your head. And I would love to answer anyone in the comment section below. I read all the comments on these videos. Yeah, the first thing people sell when markets are down are their holiday homes. Well, guys, you're completely wrong, because Costa del Sol is no longer a holiday home destination. A big part of clients that buy here are holiday home buyers, but not everyone is. Like 40-50% of our buyers, well, not 40-50%, 40% are relocation buyers. 30% of people are spending 6 months a year here. Like, Spain is no longer that cheap destination. When I started real estate, Costa del Sol was, that cheap sort of Spanish real estate destination where you pick up a property for 250,000 euros. That's not what this market is anymore. So get over it. That's never going to come back, at least to this area, Costa del Sol.
Yeah. So why would we even be talking about the cost of buying and selling property in Spain as sort of a harsh reality?
Because it's another thing we've touched on the YouTube channel quite a few times, and it's something that's not talked about enough. Spain has some very strong exit costs, and people only tend to look at the cost going in, not the cost going out. And when you enter real estate market in Spain, you'll be sort of confronted with different players, and these players are normally agents, developers, and everyone just talks about, oh, this is a great opportunity, oh, this will appreciate, oh, you're buying early stages, oh, yeah, and fine, some of the time that's correct. But people also need to advise you on what's coming on after, right? Like, at some point you're going to exit, and we're preparing this masterclass, which we're going to be sharing with our YouTube community hopefully soon. And exit costs are as important as buying costs. Just don't look at your costs right now. Look at your costs when you're exiting. Even if you're not thinking of selling your property and you're looking to live your natural life in that property, at some point it's going to change hands. Inheritance. Keep in mind that these exit costs are real, and you're going to pay for them. So just very high level, without going into details, if you see a 500,000 euro property, obviously you have different buying costs in Spain depending where you are in Spain and depending what property you're going to buy. So if you buy a resale property, you've got one set of costs. And if you buy a new development or a new construction property from a developer, you have another set of costs, right? Yeah. So know your costs going in very roughly, depending where you are in Spain. It can be anywhere from 7 to 14%, very roughly, okay? So that all of a sudden, if your property is 500,000 euros, it's no longer 500,000, it's more like 550, right? Okay, so you've got that. You've also need to account for furnishings, reparations, all these things which you need to buffer in. At some point, let's add 3-4% onto that. So a 500,000 euro purchase can easily turn into circa 600,000, right? And then if you were to sell that property the next day, right, as soon as you get keys and you furnish it, you're going to have exit costs which are, agency fee, lawyer fees, taxes, which approximately, give or take, it can be up to 10%.
On your way out.
On your way out. Yeah. So our famous, saying on High Homes, and we did a whole video about it, which I really recommend you guys to check out if you're interested, is if you buy a property 500,000 euros today and you sell it for 500,000 euros tomorrow, congratulations, you've just lost 100,000 euros. Yeah. And that's a harsh reality. Yeah. So know your timeline, man. When you come to market, when are you jumping in this sort of journey and when are you jumping out? And if you haven't defined your timeline, sort of think hard about when you will be exiting. Is this going to be a 5-year, is this going to be a transitionary property? I'm buying this for 4 or 5 years and then eventually I'll buy a bigger property. Well, you need to sort of buffer in or sort of, put all the numbers into your Excel sheet so it makes sense. the longer the timeline, the better. But
I was just going to say, the earlier the younger you are, I suppose, the more likely you are to change properties more frequently, and obviously the older you are, perhaps less.
Exactly. So if it's an investment property or whatever it is, like just understand your timeline, as your cost going in and cost going out. So when people in this industry go, you're buying a bargain, just think to yourself, great, I'm buying a bargain. That's great. Like if you're buying a bargain, congratulations, great work. But at some point I need to sell, and I need to take into consideration my selling costs at the moment of buying. And that's something that people don't do, and that's a harsh reality that people sort of don't think about and come to sell and then or exit or whatever and are sort of shocked. And that's a harsh reality. Like, know your stuff.
Speaking of knowing your stuff and harsh realities, in your experience, what are some of the typical fees and taxes that people in Spain, when buying a property or selling a property in Spain, that people typically overlook?
Selling or buying?
Both.
Okay, so when buying,
fees and taxes, specifically.
So fees and taxes. I mean, you've also got transfer tax, VAT, and the usual.
The hidden stuff.
The hidden stuff.
What,
I think
what
is
are the things that people don't understand?
The buffer. People don't buffer for. So in the case of resale properties, it's defects in the property. Like expect a property to give you some problems. Like a property will give you some problems at some point. So buffer for that. AC is not working.
What would you buffer percentage-wise?
I think a 1 to 2%.
Okay.
Small. It depends on the property price.
That's an important number.
If you're looking at like a €1 million sort of transaction, 1% is, let's say, 10 grand. I'd say around that, right? But if it's a smaller property, just a bit. I mean, obviously it's better to do an inspection when you buy the property, make sure that everything's okay, so you don't get the surprises, but buffer for some sort of issues, Things like removals, moving furniture, people don't think about it. So it's important to, make a list and be conservative and add more than less, right?
Yeah.
That's on the buying side. On the selling side, people don't understand, that they need, most probably they will try to sell direct to not, to save themselves the agency fee, but it's very difficult to sell property in Spain without an agency. Like if you do, congratulations, well done, but it's not easy. So first of all, know that you're most likely going to use an agency, which is going to charge you between 3 and 6%, depending where you are in Spain. Other costs which are really not really talked about a lot could be plusvalia, which is a municipal tax you pay on the increase of value of the land. And then you have capital gains. And capital gains depends on sort of how much money you've made, your costs and so on. So sort of know those.
So what happens if you don't plan for these costs?
So I'd say that there is a portion of buyers which are more impulsive buyers. And to those buyers, if you know that's the sort of buyer you are, I think you need to just take a step back, right? And just make sure that you calculate all the costs going in, understand the costs going out. And if you are an impulsive buyer, just put everything on a piece of paper and just take emotion out of the equation. You can walk into a penthouse or a beautiful apartment and fall in love with that Spanish property, which is your dream, or a Spanish finca. Just take a quick moment, take a breath, right, and just write down the costs on a piece of paper.
Especially if you've flown down from sort of rainy wherever and you're in the sun and you got views over the ocean. I think it's very easy to become impulsive, even if you're not an impulsive buyer in the first place.
It's very easy. So ask all the questions at the moment of viewing your property. Ask all the questions about costs, which we talk about a lot. Running costs, which you might not really think about. And just take a step back, write everything down, sleep on it. Don't let anyone pressure you into making a move.
Just on that topic and sort of the harsh realities. I mean, the market that we're in now is a market where supply is low. But at the same time, you do have to act quite fast if you see an opportunity, because it could disappear very quickly. So that's the flip side of things.
I'm talking about impulsive buyers. Another thing is the educated buyer. Right, like I've always said on our High Homes YouTube channel, is like you need to be walking around with a revolver and a bullet in the chamber, right? So when you come across that property you've been looking for, you need to be able to pull that trigger fast and swiftly, right? Yeah. But that was more like for the impulsive buyers, which might have that urge to go, let's go, right? Yeah, okay, it's great, but I think that it comes a moment when you're an educated buyer, you know exactly what you're looking for, and you found that perfect opportunity, and you have perfect overview of all your costs, perfect overview of the entire property you're buying, everything, then move swiftly.
Yeah. And what's the best way to avoid surprises when transacting a property?
And ask as many questions as you can at the beginning, during, and after. So
to your agent, to your lawyer,
everyone,
to your mortgage advisor.
No question is stupid. There's zero question which is stupid. Running costs, taxes, experience that the current vendor has had with the property. That when you're buying from the developer, ask any question that might come to your mind. Don't think it's a stupid question.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, I want to move into expectations versus reality when buying a property in Spain.
Yep.
Do most buyers out there really understand how expensive Spain has become?
It depends where they buy in Spain. So the interesting thing about Spain is that we have a big landmass, and you can buy property for as cheap as 6,000 euro for an apartment that exists. If you go into Cuenca, these old sort of towns which are sort of virtually ghost towns, right? You can buy a property from 1,000 euro per square meter, which you essentially couldn't even build. The property you're buying at a price per square meter, which you couldn't even build today for that same price. And then you got property which is sold for 20,000 euro per square meter. So I think that Spain is a market of a lot of variety. Like, you can't put Spain into one bucket. You have rural Spain, you have coastal Spain, you have prime Spain, you have city Spain, and everything works a bit differently. So, expectation versus reality, like, a lot of people tend to want to come to what I call prime Spanish locations, which are, Costa del Sol, some areas of Alicante, some areas of Barcelona, Mallorca, and still have that mentality, which we just talked about earlier, that it's still a cheap location. It's not that. So if you're coming to, let's say, prime, because these are essentially European prime hotspots right now. Take away like Spain for 1 second. It's like a European prime hotspot. And the reality is, in these prime hotspots, you're going to be, for new construction, for example, you won't be able to get anything for less than 4,000 euro per square meter on average. Of course, some developers here and there will be less depending where you are, but that's the reality, right? Then going back to Spain being country of variety, if you go into the inlands, you go, for example, my brother, right? My brother lives in Cádiz. And in Cádiz, you go buy a finca with like its own land and olive trees for 250,000 euros with a big land. Of course, the property is built in the 70s and needs some restoration, but that still exists. So, if you're a sort of adventurous buyer, Spain has a bit of everything, But in prime hotspots, do not expect to find like, 200,000 euro apartments. They don't exist anymore.
How do you think buyers should set sort of realistic expectation when choosing location? Like, what would your advice be?
So,
and also, like, I know we're based in the south. Like, those that are considering coastal, kind of east coast versus south coast.
So, the only advice I can give, people which are watching this right now, is scouting trips. Like, you need to feel it in your own body. Like, every area will be different for different people. Some people love the city bustle of Barcelona, Madrid. Some people like the Valencia sort of area more than the Costa del Sol area. It really depends about the kind of lifestyle you're after. So, in terms of expectation, do as much research as you can. Like, I'm really happy that our YouTube channel is very much a tool for clients which are looking to at least look at, the south part of Spain. Our area guides help them, understand the different areas. But use YouTube, use all the online tools as possible to understand the different areas, do research. And once you've done, there's a moment where you can't do more research, right?
Yeah.
And whenever that moment comes, then your next step is to do scouting trips. With everything you've learned in your research sort of period, go and enjoy sort of the experience of investigating and understanding the different locations. I've got clients, actually we interviewed a client recently that before they decided to buy in Estepona, which is where we were located in the south of Spain, they rented a car from Barcelona and drove down all the different coastlines.
They did it the right way.
It's a beautiful drive, It's like, okay, I'm going to spend, 1 week in each location and, really sort of see the practical side of what it is to live in Valencia, what it is to live in Alicante. And they did something very clever, which was also check it in winter and in summer. And that's like a pro tip right there. Like, if you come to Estepona in summer, it's not the same as it is in winter. The same as Alicante. Some areas of Alicante are very busy in summer, but ghost towns in winter. So you need to, understand the locations at different moments and different moments of the year and different moments of the day.
Would you argue that you can still get a bargain in Spain? Or is that just a myth?
Yeah, you can. Of course you can. Of course you can. But like,
I guess the definition of bargain is different for everybody.
We have two things, right? So we call it a bargain, and then we have a bargain. So if you're a professional, like, professional in the sector, like for example, we have a small investment company that buys and sells, right? One thing is a bargain for a buyer, right, end user, and one thing is a bargain for a business, right, that's looking to turn a profit. So, if you are, I'll give you a quick example. You're John, and you're looking to buy a property in Jardinana in La Cala. It's a super well-known development, right? And let's just say that for argument's sake, the average price for a 3-bed in that development is 500,000 euros, right? And you are able to secure a unit because someone needs to sell at 460,000 euros, right? For John, that's a bargain. But for me, that's not a bargain because of the sort of ingoing costs and outgoing costs, I need it to be a bargain in order to make a considerable sort of markup. So, a bargain might be 400 or 390 compared to 500,000. So back to your question, is it possible to find those bargains? Bargains are still out there, but if you're looking for a bargain, rest assured that there's another 1,000 people looking for that same bargain.
Yeah.
So, if you need to be fast, you already need to be fast in the existing market. If you're in the bargain market, you need to be as fast as light, and speed is of the essence, right? You need to really be engaged with the market. You can't just, randomly come to Costa del Sol and think, I'm going to be the smartest and find the biggest bargains. You have locals, you have people which are on the ground searching for bargains every single day. There are bargains. You can still find, property which is sold at auction, which are a very tricky way of buying property. That, for example, this weekend there was a few which were quite interesting. That,
Which come with certain risks associated, definitely.
Of course, definitely.
And which bargains often do.
No bargain is clean.
Yeah.
Like, the dirtier and the worse the property is, normally the more beneficial it is. I've seen a bit of everything. I've seen properties purchased at auction for 90,000 euros and sold within 3 days for 300,000 euros. Does that still happen? Yes, occasionally. But for the sort of end buyer, like, it's very difficult to access bargains because there's very little of them, but they still exist. But I think that what's more common are just good deals. Like, for example, we have a client of ours that's Dutch, that recently bought with James, right? And they found this incredible, villa in Cerro del Águila, right?
I remember.
Yeah, and even you looked at it, it's like, Jesus, that's amazing,
beautiful.
right?
Yeah, I think we all crowded around the computer. Wow.
It was very well priced. I think it was like 740,000 euros. Something like
Yeah,
that.
it was a beauty.
And like, is that a bargain? Well, no. But is that a bargain? Well, in terms of the real estate market for that area, that villa renovated to that was a bargain.
Yeah, I think it came furnished and everything. I mean, it was
But
really nice.
was it easy to get into the viewing? No. Do we have to fight with other agencies to get in?
Yeah, that was quite the story.
And James did it. He pulled it through the line. So these things do exist, but you need to be fast on your feet. Like the story with this property in actually what happened was that there was no viewings until Monday of that week, of the next week. And on Saturday, James was driving by
they were scouting
house.
the area.
They were scouting the area, and they saw the listing agent's car outside, and he happened to basically say, "Do you mind if we just have a quick look?" And without really having a viewing that day, our client was able to secure it before anyone else saw it. So you also need to be fast. That's one example. But bargains, yes, they still do exist. The easiest way of buying a bargain today for an end buyer that's not too much of a headache is generally buying really early stages of plan. That's like the most, what's the word I'm looking for? The most energy efficient way of buying a bargain property. It doesn't require so much stress. You jump in early stages, buy something 25-30% under market value, and you bought yourself a bargain. Congratulations. The only thing you have to wait a while for it to be finished.
Yeah.
That's pro tip, I think.
All right, let's get into sort of the last part of this segment. Let's get into navigating the market and the players that are involved.
Yeah. Okay. I feel, Matt, I feel like we've done it's a really interesting video putting all these things together, because for every single sort of sub chapter in this video, we've done a video that's performed really well on the channel.
Yeah.
Right. And this topic is exactly another one, like navigating. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us again, who are the players in the kind of the main players in the market here in Spain?
Okay. So navigating, let's start by sort of outlining the basics. Is navigating the Spanish real estate market has never been harder. And I don't like to use the word navigating because it's what most professionals use, like navigating Costa del Sol, navigating real estate. But it's true. Why is it true? Well, it's because on both the resale market and the new development market, it's a market of contrast.
What's the term you would rather use if not navigating?
Hunting.
Yeah. Okay.
Hunting. I think it's more of a hunt.
Yeah.
I think navigating is perfect idea of sailing through calm waters.
Okay, that's a good. All right, fair enough. I understand.
I think this is more of a bias today.
It's a battle.
It's a battle. It's more of getting into mud with your gun hunting.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it can be navigating. I think it depends where you buy in Spain. I think it depends where you buy. Especially in areas with supply crunch, it's harder than it is in other areas. Back to basics of what we've always said is, the market's never been harder, and there's two ways of entering this market, at least in the south of Spain. Different areas vary. You have, going into resale resale purchase, which is buying from a private vendor, and you have buying from a new developer or from a developer. If you're buying from a private vendor, a resale property, it's difficult to understand market value properly, and it's never been as hard as it is today to understand what property is actually valued at the right price, right? So you have a scenario where you go into a suburban area of East or West Marbella, and you have maybe 60 apartments for sale, right? And you have a few vendors listing at the right market price. You have a few vendors taking advantage of supply crunch and going, hey, you know what? Let me just try a cheeky, there's not much for sale in my street, so let me just try a cheeky 10% more, see what happens, right? And then you've got, a mix of these sort of listings where you really need local advice to understand, what's really more in line with market value. These people, which normally tend to price higher, will eventually not sell the property and reduce it. Then you start seeing property reduced, and it's sort of really confusing for buyers. That's on the resale side of things. And it's also, by the way, it's also difficult for agents.
For sure.
For agents as well. If there's a development where there's been nothing for sale for 3 years, and all of a sudden there's 3 apartments for sale, and understanding how to value property and where you should price your property is also challenging for agents. So if an agent says to you, oh yeah, this is a very easy thing to value, again, talking very loosely here, it's not the case right now. It's not easy to price properties. The second thing is new development. So with new constructions, developers are in a situation right now where they're holding stock back, right? They don't want to sell out too soon. So it's understanding price is one thing, but in this real estate market, it's understanding inventory. And that's the key difference. People want to understand pricing, and understanding pricing is very important, but understanding inventory and how the inventory behaves in this real estate market is even more important than understanding pricing. Because, if inventory is selling, well, it's priced well. If inventory is not selling, well, it's not selling.
Yeah.
So, at least for in our agency, within our sort of rockstar team, we want to understand where inventory is getting sold, at what price points they're selling, but most importantly, what's not selling, and make sure we report that back to our buyers and to our vendors.
Having said all that, who are the actual players involved in all of this, right?
So there's a bit of everything. The players which actually carry weight in the market at the moment is developers.
Yeah.
Vendors. It's starting to. We see the market transitioning to a buyer market, right? So buyers have such a strong weight in the market, but I think they're going to have even a more relevant role in telling vendors, I'm not paying that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's where we're starting to get to now. And the same thing for developers, We're seeing developers not reduce price, but being a little bit more flexible in certain payment terms and things. So, as of end of 2025, which is when this video is going to be aired, we're transitioning into a buyer's market. That's the way I see it. So that's why I would say that navigating, in my words, I'd call it property hunting, because what we just discussed is one of the harsh realities. It's not that pretty, it is work. Get ready to do some work in order to find that right property. Yeah. So that would sort of wrap up the harsh realities of buying property in Spain.
Okay. So Kian, tell us a little bit in terms of the harsh realities of buying property in Spain, again, the context of this whole video, what the roles of agents, lawyers, and notaries are, and why it matters to buyers.
It matters to buyers because you need to understand how they sort of link themselves and the communication, and the roles they have between themselves, right? So the harsh reality is if you have, let's say, you need to have a team around you, right, as a buyer. If you don't have a team around you and you're a solo player, well, good luck to you. That's fine, But if like most buyers...
Not advised, by the way.
Not advisable, but if you are a solo player, do that. But if you're not normally happens is a buyer will have himself, a real estate agent, a lawyer, right, and the gestoria, right, people that do paperwork. So the real estate agent is that person to help them navigate or hunt, like we say, understand what's for sale, inventory, and so on. The next person is the lawyer. Is going to make sure that everything is correct with the property, the due diligence is done, and all let's say the legal paperwork of the property is in good order. And the third is a nice sort of interesting figure, is a gestoria. It's a typical Spanish sort of person that helps with trámites, with documentation, copies, and so on, right? So in terms of harsh realities, is you need to work with these people. Like if you don't wanna, if you wanna sort of do all your research and jump to the market and go, I can cut corners here by not using a lawyer, or I can find the best deal without a real estate agent and I don't need a gestoria, fine. But the harsh reality is you're gonna have a lot of headaches along the way. And if you do it, I'd love a comment below because I'd love to. I'd love to hear your experience. I'd love to hear, if someone's actually done the entire cycle by themselves as a first-time buyer. If you bought 1 or 2 properties, that doesn't count. First-time buyer, foreigner buying in Spain, I think that you need a team around you. And if you don't, the harsh reality is it's gonna burn.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, where you may save on costs in the early stages, you're going to pay for
Totally.
in terms of time spent and all sorts. Yeah. All right, guys. I think that's a wrap. Hope we haven't scared you off from buying property here. Highlighting the harsh realities of buying in Spain. I
think it's the contrary, right? It's like, this is the reality, and that's very much like in line with how we do things on the channel.
Totally right. Yeah.
Like, this is the reality, no filter. This is what we see. This is what we think. And some things might not be prettier than others, but we talk about it, and then you guys can make an informed decision, right?
Yeah, I mean, the process here might be more complicated than other markets. It might be simpler. If you feel like we've missed anything at all from this topic, if you've experienced your own harsh realities about buying property in Spain, please leave a comment in the section below.
Yeah.
And with that, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as always. And with that, we look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Hasta luego.
Ciao, ciao.